Well, happy Labor Day to everybody. This morning we are up at the Allegan State game area. It's one of the Michigan properties. It is south of Grand Rapids, just under a 2-hour drive from home. So this is several tens of thousands of acres of game preserve. So this is probably not the place you want to go hiking in November, December during whitetail season, because I'm sure the gunfire around here is pretty intense. But we're going to do about a 10-mile hike today on the Swan River Loop, which goes north from the trailhead where we just stepped off from, along the east side of the river, around Swan Pond, a little further north up the east side of the river. We're going to cross the creek. We're going to come back down south, kind of jut out around the pond, and then back to the trailhead. Should be right at about 10 miles. I'm figuring 4.5 hours with a nice lunch break about halfway. Should be nice and hilly, but the elevation doesn't look to be too bad. There's a couple of nice hills that we're going to have to face. But I've also heard rumors that the trail is not really greatly marked. This is not like the NCT that we did a couple weeks ago where they have lots and lots of blazes. We can get a good shot here. That's the creek. So we're going to be skirting that both north and south for the next few hours. But I've heard it's got some nice scenery. It's nice woods. Very remote out here. Came down some gravel roads, took Tammy's car. Probably wish I would have taken the truck. But we'll get some fresh air. Ran into a nice couple walking their dogs at the trailhead. They said the trail's in great shape. The weeds are real calm. Not a lot of bugs, so great news. So we're going to enjoy our Labor Day. Got my full pack on again, just getting the exercise. Like I said, about halfway we're going to stop and have lunch, very similar to what we did at Yankee Springs. But this will just be a nice 10-mile loop. So we'll see you out on the trail. Okay, so we get off the little road onto the actual trail. And the first thing we hit is a series of downed trees. So that might be interesting. Another interesting thing I just learned is my GPS satellite communicator that mounts to my harness. I can use that for sending updates to Tammy, let her know I'm okay. It has a little SOS button on it I can hit for rescue if I get injured. It hooks to my phone. Well, climbing over a log just a few minutes ago, I didn't realize it, but I dropped my cell phone. And I took a step, and as soon as it got out of range of the GPS communicator, or the little unit, it starts beeping. It's like, oh, and I look down and my phone isn't in the little holder pouch. So that was a very valuable little value add-on that I didn't realize was there, because this would have been a very uncomfortable walk. So while on the NCT we have the blue blazes, here we have yellow ones, and as you can see, they're pretty faded and they're few and far between. So this might be a challenging trail to stay on path. So I have a map. I also have my GPS with All Trails and OnX Backcountry. So I have some redundant ways to navigate. But as you can see, when you were with me on my last hike up here in Michigan, the blue blazes for the NCT are really obvious. Here, not so much. There are these, you'll see, but they're just more, somebody walked back here with a rattle can of yellow spray paint and hit some trees here and there. I will definitely say I'm glad Tammy isn't here, because I think I've walked through already and I am half a mile into this 10-miler. I have already walked into no less than 37 spider webs that are going across this particular path. So my darling bride would not be happy with that at all. Okay, I just hit what I think is the biggest elevation gain in the hike, just in a mile into it. And I'm always glad when I hit those at the beginning. What's really rough is when you're 10 miles into it and all of a sudden you're looking up a really, really big hill. It's not a lot of fun, but it's really pretty up here. Besides the couple that I saw at the trailhead, I have not seen a single person. So this might be a wonderful forest of solitude for those days where you're just peopled out. Like I said, until turkey season and deer season and all that come around, then you'll be dodging bullets and birdshot. But so far, it's a really pretty area. Okay, so we are about a mile and a little over a mile and a half in. To the left of us is actually Swan Pond or Swan Lake. You can't really see it because it's through all the brush. But this is pretty much this section, this east side of the south. Ooh, that root jumped right out at me. This east side of the south Swan Creek loop is all of this woods. This is all it is. I really thought I'd see more of the creek and all that, but really you catch little glimpses of it. But we'll see how that develops in the northern part and then as we get on the west side. But this has been just quite secluded, just this trail cutting through the middle of these hardwood trees. So we're a little over 2 miles in. So far been beautiful. Now we're in a much more open area, getting a little bit away from the Swan Lake. So as I was saying, this loop is actually two separate loops here. You have the Swan Creek Trail Southern Loop and then the Northern Loop. But, you know, me being me, I don't want to just do half of it. I want to do the whole thing. So I'm actually going up the eastern side of the Southern Loop, eastern side of the Northern Loop, then circle down and do the western side of both. So we're coming up on a pretty busy road here that kind of divides the north and southern loops. So we have to hop across that road, play a little Frogger, and then we'll be on the northern loop side. And then we'll continue that up probably another 2.5 miles or so until we hit the point that we cross the creek and head back south. Think about then might be when we decide to take lunch. So we'll pop out the backpacking chair. I'm kind of hungry because I didn't grab any breakfast or anything on the way in. I was just kind of munching a bit on snacky snacks. So we may actually cook something this time. Or last time I think we just had a Cliff Bar. So here is Swan Pond or Swan Lake. So we just happened to bump out. There's like this very rudimentary boat ramp. Got some people out there fishing, but it's doesn't look like there's a lot of water movement, a lot of green stuff growing. So getting drinkable water out of here might be a bit gross, but looks like might be a nice little crappie spot. I'm gonna do a little bit of fishing one day. All right, this is more what I was thinking. So I need water. Got plenty of drinking water here to filter. We'll go over that later. But I was hoping it would be more like this. So I think the southern part is a little more in those heavily wooded forest, but the northern loop is going to be more skirting the creek. All right, this little walkway, if you see it wiggle, This is some sketchy ass shit here. I mean, missing planks. The whole thing bows when you walk on it. Yeah, yeah, this is, that's not good. Such a pretty little creek. Okay, so I had to come down along out of those trees and navigate over this fallen tree, all while just a couple of feet, not even a feet, like on the very edge, into the creek, wearing a 30-pound backpack. So I thank you, good Lord, for not having me go swimming today, because I could have easily lost my balance and ended up in the water. Yeah, this part is a lot more interesting than just walking through the open woods. Okay, so we are almost 4 miles into it, so we're over a third of the way done, and this trail's gone from pretty easy to fairly rugged, especially the way it skirts along the creek. Some of the obstacles get pretty treacherous because you got to find your way over and under these big fallen logs without falling in the creek, or you have to scale up this side of this really steep hillside to stay on the path. So it's definitely up the ante on difficulty for this last couple miles, but it's definitely been an adventure worth the effort. I do have a couple of hikers behind me. They'll catch up with me a bit, and then I'll pull ahead of them when they get caught up in some of the terrain. But as you can see, it's a lot of, this is actually the trail where before you saw that nice wide open walkway. This is it. It's far more backcountry-ish than the wide open, well-prepared, well-maintained. I mean, it's still maintained. You see, it's not overgrown, but whew, getting a bit winded, so we're going to do probably a little more than a mile, maybe a mile and a quarter, and I think we're going to stop for a break, have some lunch, depending on what this terrain is. But so far, definitely enjoying this course. We are now in this open area. It kind of looks like to be honest, kind of looks like an old railroad bed. You can see part of the creek here. But we are going to come up this way, and that's actually the turnaround point to head back south along the west side of the creek. So this is the halfway point. We are at 4.9 miles. So we're gonna maybe even be a little over 10 miles total. So we're gonna come up here. Once we get out of the sun, get back into the woodline, we're gonna find a nice little comfy spot and have a break, have some lunch. We're actually seeing some other hikers out, which is good. Good to have some other people out here. But so far it's been a beautiful day out in the woods. Okay, so here I am. I'm enjoying my Mountain House beef lasagna. They're not actually too bad. I mean, they're a lot better than the MREs that we had in the Army. Basically, you just boil up like a cup and a half of water in my little butane stove, and you dump it in this little pouch and you let it sit for about 10 minutes. It's piping hot, so I'm going to let it cool off a bit. But they're actually not too bad, and they weigh almost nothing. You put a bunch of these things in the bottom of a pack. The drawback is they are quite expensive. They're anywhere from about $13 to $15 a piece. But I don't know if I'd mentioned, but I actually picked up a bunch of Huel. You see the commercials and stuff. So I was playing with that at home, and I think that's going to be kind of my go-to for backpacking meals, because you can dish that out in little baggies, and it's a couple of bucks per meal. And you put those little chicken, pre-cooked chicken packets in there, and some other little condiments and stuff. You make some really good stuff. I had one for lunch the other day at home, just because I wanted to, pilot out a backpacking meal. But these aren't too bad. They're really popular. Like I said, they just get kind of expensive. Just found this nice little quiet spot just off the trail. Trail's like 10 or 15 foot in front of me. I just kind of pulled off to the side and broke out my little backpack chair. It's a luxury item. It weighs like 2 pounds, and while yes, every pound counts, I like to sit here and eat like a civilized human being and not like a savage. So I'm gonna let this thing cool off a little bit and then start heading back. We've talked about water consumption before, and I brought 2 liters of water. 2 liters of water with temperatures like this in the 70s, into low 80s, usually will get me through 10 to 12 miles without a problem. Although I may stop and top one off when I get down back by the creek again. I'm kind of at a high point now. But I've got my water filter system. I may top that back off because I am down to one 1 liter bottle now. And I always, like I've said in other videos, water is one thing the military taught me. Don't skimp on. It's better to have a little bit too much than a little bit too little. So when the situation arises, we'll swing over, and even if I only fill up that empty 1 liter bottle half full, it gives me a little bit of extra water just in case. I put a flavor packet in it because like I've said before, those filters are great. They get all the icky stuff out, but they don't really help much with the flavor of the water. So I'm gonna eat lunch here and probably be another 15-20 minutes, and then we'll put the pack back on and start heading back to the car. And those of you curious, this is my jet boil. This is my stove. So this is, the size of a medium coffee can. Weighs, I don't know, maybe 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. But this has the burner, the pot, and the fuel canister all bundled up into this one thing. And it even has a French press adapter for the greatest field coffee. I wish they had these in the Army. And then plus inside this little flame looking thing is a temperature sensor. So when you snap this whole thing together and you turn on the flame, as the water gets hotter, these turn red. And when they're red, your water's boiling. So there are far more efficient ways to boil water. I mean, you can get little pocket rocket stoves that weigh a lot less. And I have one of those at home. But this is just one of those luxury items that I carry a little bit of extra weight, but it's just so handy, and everything is all self-contained in one little thing. All right, so lunch is over, back to work. So got everything cleaned up, got all the garbage picked up and in the pack, because everything that goes out into the woods comes back from the woods. So got a full belly, got a little bit of rest, feeling pretty good. So now it's the back 40 and get back to the trailhead, back to the car, and head home. So we'll see. I'm kind of curious, is this side going to be as rugged as the east side? Because that'll be interesting to know. I tend to like to do the more difficult parts first, get it out of the way. Also, that's when you seem to have a lot more energy, where when you've already been walking for 10 miles and then all of a sudden you gotta, hump over a bunch of hills and sand dunes and rocks and things like that. It's definitely a lot more challenging. So we'll see. I ended up doing the loop counterclockwise. So we'll see if that was a wise decision. I don't know anybody who's done this trail, so there wasn't a lot to ask. The trail notes wasn't a whole lot there. So well, I'm just playing it by ear, part of the adventure. I definitely have to confess, I get pretty spoiled on the NCT with the blazes on every tree, because there's not a lot of blazes here. Now, there aren't a whole lot of trails that head in different directions, but there are quite a few. So I'm constantly needing to check the GPS, where on the NCT, there's like flipping blue blaze on every fourth tree. So I think on the national trails, we might get a little bit spoiled. Had to stop for a minute on the trail and break out the leukotape. I got started to get a hot spot on the back of my right heel, which is very unusual. I never get blisters there. I thought, okay, I better stop and take a look at it as soon as I can. In a matter of less than a quarter mile, it went from a hot spot to a full-blown blister popped. So pulled my sock off and put a nice big thick coat of this waterproof leukotape. Moleskin works great, but it's not nearly as waterproof as that stuff, and as much as my feet are sweating up in here. One of the things that I do regret not realizing how rugged some of these sections would be is I didn't wear my boots. I wore my hiking shoes, which, if you're like me and you have questionable ankles, this is a great place to roll an ankle. It didn't look like I would need my boots when I was kind of doing map recon, but getting down here, I definitely, hindsight, should have worn my full hiking boots with all the ankle support. Those boots also hold my foot a lot tighter within the boot, where my shoes, it offers just a little bit of wiggle room inside the shoe, and I think that's what got me. All the especially the off camber, you spend a lot of time walking along the side of these really steep rolling moraine hills from when the glaciers came through and made all these really high hills. So you spend a lot of time walking off camber, which is just really weird on the ankles, and it twists the foot. And I mean, I'm not a doctor, but it makes sense to me mechanically that it's just going to put pressure on different parts of your feet that normally don't, and I think that's what did it. So got my foot all taped up, gonna throw the pack back on, and I think I've got maybe a half a mile to the end of the northern loop, and then I hop back on the southern loop, and then it's about another 2.5 miles or so to the trailhead. All right, we're 7.8 miles according to the watch. We are a little over 3/4 of the way. We are now officially back into the south loop. We are southbound on the west side of the river. So we're on the last leg. So this snakes back down to the trailhead where we started. Foot's still a little, I got that raw spot. So it's gonna not be a tremendous amount of fun on this way back, but I'm kind of favoring it, but it happens. I got to toughen up these feet a little bit. But we're on that final leg. All in all, feeling good. Definitely getting tired. Definitely feeling it. But we're heading down towards Swan Lake. We saw Swan Lake earlier, but we're gonna turn down by there and kind of follow the coast of that up, and then up the river to the trailhead. So if I find anything interesting, we'll stop and get some pictures. Okay, here's another shady ass bridge. So I'm gonna record this so that way I may be recording my own death. Oh man, this thing is wobbly. Yeah, I think that bridge may have been built in the 70s. Okay, we are 9 miles into the 10-mile hike. We're rounding around the south end of Swan Pond. Then we have that short little track of the creek that we follow to the trailhead. So this side has been a lot gentler on the elevation and the ruggedness of the trail, which is nice because I'm getting kind of tired and starting to run out of energy in the legs. So it is nice that it lightened up a little bit. But coming to an end here. We got maybe a little bit more than a mile left and we're done. There are a ton of these. These trees fall and they go over the path, and past that is either the creek or the lake. So you can't go around it. You just got to go over it. This one isn't too bad. Some of them have been brutal, especially when you got a big backpack on. There's probably, I'm not exaggerating, there's got to have been 20 to 25 of these trees laying across the trail. They definitely need a chainsaw crew out here to clear some of these things out, because like I said, this one isn't that bad at all, but some of them have just been absolute killers. All right, so we're past the Swan Pond and we're back to the creek. So now we just have to skirt along the creek a little bit and we're back to the trailhead. So we're getting closer. I think we may have about a half a mile just through here. But it's good to see the creek again, and I know we're pretty much almost done. All right, we're back at the trailhead. I've got 10.82 miles, according to Garmin. Now that I did do a couple of missteps, so I had to backtrack a little bit, not much more than a tenth of a mile. So that may have been outside some of the dunes trails with the soft sand. That may have been one of the most rugged trails I've ever done. It was pretty rough. There were some nice flat stretches, but there was a whole lot of climbing over stuff. So it's going to be nice to get this pack off. But it was a great hike. That's nice. Well, once again, thank everybody for joining me and putting up with my ramblings. And we'll see you next time. Later.